coaching search is on in Clemson for a new defensive coordinator. The 2025 roster is looking really, really strong, with Antonio Williams recently announcing he'll be returning along with Bryant Wesco and TJ Moore, giving Clemson maybe the best trio of wide receivers in the entire nation, certainly the ACC. You've got Kate Klubnik returning. You've got most of the offensive line returning. This offense has a chance to be really, really special. They need the defense to be better. If they are, this team could contend not just for another playoff berth, but to actually win some games in the playoff and maybe not be too much of a stretch to win another national championship. So it's a special opportunity in 2025 with the way the roster is constructed. I know a lot of fans, I think all fans, would love to see Brent Venables return, but given has not happened, it seems like that's a foregone conclusion. It will not happen. You can't just punt next year hoping, maybe it doesn't work out in Oklahoma and Brett comes the following year. You cannot miss the special 2025 opportunity you have for the possibility that maybe one day Venables will leave Oklahoma and want to come back, which he may or may not want to do. So we're looking at long-term solutions. We're looking at guys who can make an instant impact at the same time. And I've got a list here I'm going to go through of likely or possible candidates for the job, some of which I've heard speculated from different sources and maybe realistic. I'll also look at some names that I think are not realistic, and I'll tell you why. So without further ado, let's dive right in. The first one, and this was reported by TCI as well as the Post and Courier, so maybe the lead candidate in some regards, at least by sort of online rumblings, is Tim Banks, the defensive coordinator at Tennessee. And first thought is, well, Tennessee is good on defense, but why would he leave Tennessee for Clemson? Feels like somewhat of a lateral move, SEC money. He's not going to get, too crazy of a raise, but his contract at Tennessee is actually expired. And the fact that it has not been renewed might indicate he could be moving. Miami's also been linked to Tim Banks. So maybe he and his agent are just playing interest for a bigger contract at Tennessee, and that's certainly possible. But usually when you do that, you're also willing to walk. So we'll see if he stays put in Tennessee or goes to Clemson or Miami. I think all are very viable, and he certainly seems like a realistic candidate. He has been their defensive coordinator since 2021, and they've been really good at all the things that Wes Goodwin's defense really struggled with this year. So from let me first just kind of go through his resume, and then we'll talk a little bit about what they've accomplished. So he's been the DC at Tennessee since 2021. Before that, he was the co-DC with Brent Pry over at Penn State. So Brent Pry, I believe, would be the one calling the plays there. And before that, he was a defensive coordinator and secondary coach at Illinois, where they have really strong defenses that seem to overperform their talent level. He's 53 years old. I mentioned his contract is expired. This year, Tennessee held 11 out of their 13 opponents under 24 and 10 out of their 13 opponents to 20. Really, really impressive there. Of course, they surrendered 31 to Georgia, 42 to Ohio State in their playoff. So defense seemed a little unprepared there for sure. And a lot of those really impressive performances were against teams like Arkansas. So maybe not quite as impressive as it looks on the surface there, but from 2021 to 2023, the Vols led the SEC in tackles for loss per game. They were third in turnovers gained. And from 2022 to 2023, these stats don't include this year, but allowed just 3.24 yards per rush, which leads the SEC. So Tim Banks is going to stop the run. His defenses are going to cause havoc. And this year they were pretty darn good, didn't allow a whole lot of points. So he'd be a strong candidate. Maybe the most realistic one. We'll see what's going on with that contract and sort of negotiations there. But I think that's a solid candidate. Maybe not my number one, but I'd be more than happy if he came to Clemson. I think it's a guy who's definitely on the radar. A younger guy, Tyler Santucci from Georgia Tech. He's only 36 years old. I think he's an interesting candidate as well. So he joined Georgia Tech this year, only there for 1 year. And they improved from 128th to 32nd in rush defense. So instant impact. That Georgia Tech team he joined was really bad defensively, and he somewhat fixed it. Somewhat. I say somewhat because they still allowed 30 points in 7 different games. They just lost a bowl game to Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt was able to score on them. So, there's, and those point totals are total points. Some of those could have been pick sixes and things like that. But nonetheless, 30 points 7 times is not great. So, major improvement there. Now, in his prior stops, he was with Mike Elko. So they were awesome at Duke in 2023 when he was the DC there. They led the ACC in scoring defense, allowing just 19 points per game. So he was excellent with Elko at Duke. He was also excellent with Elko at Texas A&M. They were number one pass defense in 2022 and top 25 in scoring defense in the entire country at 20.7 points per game. So Santucci was really good in both stops, and he's made an instant impact to help improve Georgia Tech. But the resume away from Mike Elko, the great defensive mind, is just this 1 year where they still weren't great. They were just much improved. If you think you're going to keep him for a long time, I think he could be like a Clemson lifer and you can get him at 36. I do think this would be a good hire. I would be pretty excited about it. I think there's a little bit more risk here than someone like Tim Banks, who's a little older and has more of a track record that, you know, isn't tied to a elite defensive mind like an Elko. But I would love a Tyler Santucci hire as well. I think it's also very realistic. Clemson just, you know, Clemson stole their AD. They could take their DC. Now Georgia Tech's been doing great with their NIL, grabbing guys, outbidding Clemson even for guys like Tay Harris. But I still think Clemson's the better job that he would take. And then another one that I think is realistic, it was reported by TCI, is Aaron Henry. So he was he's coached at Vanderbilt, he's coached at NC State, and now he's at Illinois with Brett Bielema. And they just shut down South Carolina. And Lenora Sellers only ran for 19 rushing yards. Now, it's true, Clemson also held South Carolina to 17 points. Their offense isn't great, but I think you see a huge difference there in what they're able to do to stop a running quarterback. And frankly, it wasn't just about running quarterbacks, but it was about adjustments in game. And that's where Clemson didn't seem to either make the right ones or make any at all. There's a lot of talk about how Clemson pulled Sammy Brown out of the game in the fourth quarter, seemingly when they need him most. The fast linebacker who could actually keep up with Lenora Sellers. So I think Aaron Henry here would be certainly an upgrade. He's also young at just 36 years old. So I think a lot to offer there. When he was at Illinois, he developed Devin Witherspoon from a guy who was unranked or unrated by 24/7 to the Big Ten DB of the year and a number 5 pick in the NFL draft. And those Illinois defenses tend to be pretty good, tend to be better than their talent level would say. Now, Jim Leonhard, I have not seen this reported anywhere. I heard the name kind of thrown out there by Tiger Net's David Hood. So this is more speculative, but I think this would be a phenomenal hire. He is currently the DB coach and pass game coordinator with the Denver Broncos. So he's an assistant, but not coordinator in the NFL. Before that, he was a senior analyst, but what most people know him from is his time at Wisconsin, where he was the DC from 2017 to 2022. At the end of 2022, Paul Chryst stepped down. He became the interim. He did okay. Thought he would get the job. There was rumors he would get the job. Luke Fickell gets it instead, and he leaves. This is my speculation, but probably thinking he should have got the job. So that's when he goes, and he's an analyst for a year, then he goes to NFL. So would he now come back to college and be a coordinator for a few years and really a stronger program, or at least a program in Clemson that recruits better than Wisconsin, and then maybe he can go be a coach later? He's only 42. I think it's probably realistic. He was a legit NFL player for 10 years, 14 career interceptions. The Broncos now under his tutelage as pass game coordinator and DB coach, they are 8th in passing yards allowed. They are tied for 7th in interceptions. So they're doing pretty good there. When he was at Wisconsin, he was a Rose Award finalist, and his defense, short Big Ten, wacky COVID schedule, but still 9th in scoring defense in 2020. And then in 2021, they were 4th, only allowed 16.2 points per game, which is insane. And then in 2022, 17th, only 20.2 points per game. So he was a really successful defensive coordinator there. Does he want to come to Clemson? He's a Wisconsin guy. He's from the Midwest. Does he want to come south? And if he does, would he stay a long time? I don't know. But I think this is one I would love to see explored by Coach Sweeney. I think this would be a really strong hire. Maybe my top choice. This would be an awesome hire if they can pull Jim Leonhard in from the NFL. And then there's Tom Allen. Dustin Black, who I respect a lot on Twitter, floated this name out there. I don't know how much truth there is to it, or how much legs there are to it. But he is the linebacker coach and defensive coordinator at Penn State currently. Obviously, their defense is awesome. Before that, he was a very successful head coach for at least a while at Indiana, which is a pretty tough place to win. Although Curt Cignetti obviously got him to the playoff this year. Traditionally, a very, very hard place to win. He was also a DC at USF back in 2015. He's 54, so a little bit on the older side, but nothing crazy there. He was a coach of the year in 2020. Again, short, weird COVID schedule that year. But this year's Penn State defense is number 4 in total defense. They stopped the run. They're number 7 in rush defense, and they are number 6 in scoring defense. This would be an upgrade for sure. A lot of experience and head coaching experience, even, which could certainly help. But wouldn't be my favorite because, a couple reasons. His great year at Indiana was the COVID year, which I kind of take all outcomes that year with a little bit of a discount, and just how wonky it was, how seriously were folks taking restrictions, were other teams like not practicing. So I don't know how much stock to put in that. And then you look at this year, his defense is awesome, but they were just as good last year. They allowed 13.5 points last year. So scoring defense is 6. It was actually better last year when he wasn't there. So I don't know that I certainly think he's highly competent, would be a quality hire, but I'm not sure he's better than the other. So I kind of like Jim Leonard, Aaron Henry. I don't know. He's maybe my 5th option, but I think all of these are strong options for sure, and pretty realistic ones. So maybe less realistic ones that I've heard Jeff Hafley floated out there. That was also by David Hood, just kind of throwing names out there. But he's making $3 million per year in Green Bay. So I don't know that he would really, and he's the defensive coordinator there. So Green Bay Packers, same role with Clemson, probably making less money. Not sure he would do that. It would be weird. Phil Parker is a name that I threw out there. Would love, what they do in Iowa with less talent and an offense that hangs them out to dry pretty consistently is amazing. But as I looked into it more, he's already almost at $2 million in Iowa. He's been at Iowa for 25 years. He's 62. I'm guessing he's just going to ride this out, ride it out with Kirk Ferentz until he retires and just retire with him. That'd be my guess. I don't know that, but it would be surprising to me if he was willing to move regions of the country at this stage of his career. He probably won't. And then Brian Hayes from Indiana, currently with Indiana with Curt Cignetti. Interesting for sure. What he's able to do at Indiana is really impressive, but he just got a $1.8 million deal. Indiana's finally investing in their coaching staff, being serious about it. They gave a lot of raises. So it seems like what they're doing in Indiana has some level of sustainability to it. And part of that is keeping guys like Brian Hayes. So I don't know that he's a particularly realistic one. So as I'm looking at him, Tim Banks from Tennessee, probably very realistic. I think Tyler Santucci, extremely realistic, but maybe a little bit more risky, although I do like the upside. Aaron Henry from Illinois, I think, is a really, really strong hire. Kind of gives you the youth of Santucci, but with a little bit more, a little bit less risky, I'd say. Illinois seems to outperform their talent level. But Jim Leonard, man, if Clemson could pull Jim Leonard, I think that would be a real coup. Grab him from the NFL and get a guy who was an elite DC for Wisconsin for a long time. So we'll see what happens. We probably won't find out until sometime the week of January 6th when Dabo comes back and coaches start meeting again. But until then, the speculation's fun. Let me know who you want to hire, how realistic you think some of these names are. I'd love to get your thoughts. As always, don't forget to subscribe to this channel. It helps a lot. And if you haven't already, please like this video. I'd really appreciate it. As always, go Tigers.